Jana, we're talking about turning one piece of content into 19 pieces of content today. And I'm so excited.
That was my 1 in 19.
Oh, are you
You're like, what
sign
are you
language?
doing?
Speaking of sign language? These topics are always so curiosity seeking for people because they want to
Hmm.
know how to do this kind of thing. And you've been doing it so effectively for so long that we're going to talk about your kind of like repurposing case study today.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wanted to remind everybody that we did a live stream last week about what to do if content repurposing feels hard for you. Sorry,
Mhm.
my dog is going crazy because there's a guy in the yard doing some like stuff. Um, that live stream is really good, and I'm not going to repeat things we talked about too much, but one thing I did want to kind of point out was that one of the brain tricks that our brains play on us sometimes that keep us from feeling like we can repurpose content is, I mean, you have to start with high quality long form content anyway in order to like do it the way I like to do it, because then you have so many ways you can repurpose it. But then our brains kind of play this trick on us. I think sometimes there's lots of tricks our brains play, but one in particular is like, well, if I don't create 30 pieces of content from every blog post or 19, like Jenna and Heather said in this, live stream or whatever, then it's not worth doing it and I've failed. It's like a completist, like it's all or nothing kind of mentality. So
Yeah.
I just want to head that off right now and say, like, we're going to talk about how I took one blog post and created 19 pieces of content, but I could have done three and I could have done 10 and I could have done 19 and I could have done 30 and I could have done 50. There's no number that you need to hit in order to be successful with repurposing your content. And the way I teach things, we talked about that Paris analogy too. I teach you to create long form content and then you can always be repurposing it like on repeat. So you can repurpose and create three or four things from it now when you publish it. And then 2 months from now, you can go back to it if you want and do more, right? So it's like you can visit Paris and see more when you're there. That was the analogy we used last week. So just remember that as we're talking about 19, like if you don't do 19, like don't let this overwhelm you. Don't let us make you feel like if you're not doing all these things that it's not worth starting and just repurposing a few things and, creating two or three or four pieces of micro content from your blog post or your long form content. So just a quick
I,
caveat there.
I think that's great.
Hmm.
And we definitely reworked some of my mindset around this last week of like it's not an all or nothing. We are not playing zero sum here.
Yep.
So how do we want to break this down? If we were to focus on your process, what would it look like?
Yeah. I'm going to basically kind of outline, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I started and the process that I brought my piece of content through to create like these different ones, basically these different pieces of content. And I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure that we'll get to 19 if we count. So, so I want to start by saying like that and I'll also want to mention, and we don't want to go into this too deep because we've talked about it before, but like repetition of your content is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not lazy, it's not just time saving. It also helps people hear your messages and have them really land. Repetition actually creates sales in your business, so just keep that in mind. Repetition doesn't make
Yep.
you boring; it makes you money. That's the mantra. So I started this kind of workflow that I'm about to go through and tell people about that you can try at home as well. Do try this at home with a blog post that I published in June. It's called The 3 Ways to Keep Expert Brain from Killing Your Conversions. So this is a very common format that I use for blog posts where I talk about, it's kind of like a listicle, but I go deep into like 3 ways as opposed to going like shallow into 10. Um,
Okay.
so when I was writing it, I first of all used the high leverage content, strategic content outline for the type of content that this is. I have 9 of them in HLC, my program. And following this outline and also choosing a good topic to begin with, made sure that this piece of content, this long form piece of content, this blog, is A, conversion friendly. So it's packed with messages that are worth repeating, right? Because they prepare people to want to buy my offers. And then B, that it's detailed and rich, has a lot of valuable gems in it that can easily become standalone short form content. So,
Yeah.
this is not like a flimsy 3-paragraph blog post that is going to be like trying to get blood from a stone, like we talked about last week. So I just want to start with that. Like, this is a really good, like lots of fodder for repurposing. And so that's what makes this easy. And so I'm going to go through some of the ways that I broke it down into micro content for other platforms. And thereby, when I did that, I'm repeating my messages multiple times in multiple ways. Different people are catching it in different ways in different places where they follow me and watch my content. And this is all exactly what we want, right? We want to be repeating messages as long as those messages are high converting to begin with. Like if they're not, then it might not be worth your time to do a lot of content repurposing, right? So we have to start with that high converting content to begin with and then break it down. So first of all, I shared the blog in 2 different ways with my email list. I shared the full blog post with my email list VIPs. My VIPs get everything first. So they were like the first ones to hear that I had published a new blog post when I published it. And I pasted the introduction paragraph basically into an email. I tweaked it a little bit to make it a little bit shorter. And I think I added like a little joke or something in there. And I used that as the body of the email. And the call to action was to click over and read the full blog post. And as usual, many of my people on my list did. And so that's what I call a straight teaser, right? It's just like you're basically letting them know what they're going to learn and what's in it for them if they click over and consume the full piece of content.
Yep.
And then the second way that I repurpose it to my email is at the same time, and you don't have to do this at the same time, but I like to. I took the 3rd section of the blog because there were 3 ways that I outlined in the blog. And I took that whole section and I pasted it into a new email. And then I made some adjustments so that it's kind of like standalone. And I added a pitch for high leverage content, my offer.
Yep.
And this actually became a sales email. And that's what I call a gem pull. You're not encouraging people to go off and read the whole blog post. Instead, you're encouraging them to take some other action. And you can also use gem pulls just as standalone, like what we call value content, although I don't believe value and sales have to exist in 2 silos. But you could have the call to action be to reply back to you. It could be actually to read the rest of the blog post if you want to. You can share a gem that way. It could just be a standalone email with a different call to action that you use to join a wait list or whatever it is. But we can get lots of gems out of like a rich blog post. So those are the first 2 ways that I did that. The subject line for that second email was how to avoid the expert brain trap that keeps you clientless. That was the subject line of the sales email. So if anyone who's watching this is on my email list, you may have seen that email. It actually was like one of my top like clicked on, opened and clicked on emails during that sales period, that evergreen sales period. So a lot of people might not, or they may remember it. So those are the first 2 ways. So I know we're counting, that's 2 so far out of our 19. But I'll pause and see if you have any thoughts on that, Heather, or anything you wanted to like ask if I wasn't clear on anything or anything like that. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so you're what?
I'm trying to follow
Oh, okay. You're trying to follow. Are you
the 2
counting?
ways.
Okay. All right. So we've got 2 so far.
For some reason, I thought we were on to like 3 or 4.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's like I'm saying, like these
No,
are
we're only on 2.
2
Okay.
ways I've repurposed, but the blog post is called 3 ways that to avoid expert brain. So there may be a little bit of
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
So regular viewers of this channel, Heather, because this channel is all about Pinterest marketing and like different types of online content marketing. But I know obviously you and I are both have our roots in Pinterest education, so everyone's going to love this. The next thing I did is I pinned my blog to Pinterest, and I actually created 3 Pinterest pins for this blog post. And I did that as part of I just published a new blog post and I'm going through and, doing all these things like checklist. So I created 3 different images, Pinterest pins, and I pinned one right away, probably using the native scheduler, if I recall correctly. And then I scheduled another one roughly 30 days later, right? Now I could have used the native scheduler for that because you can schedule up to 30 days on Pinterest, right? And then I did another one for roughly 60 days later. And that one I'm sure I used later for because I schedule my pins that are more than 30 days out using later. So I actually have a link to one of the pins. I'll just open it up and see if it's worth mentioning. But But yeah, I wanted to share that because, obviously our viewers are interested in Pinterest workflows and whatnot. So this pin says 3 ways to keep expert brain from killing your conversions for online coaches and service pros. And the call to action on it is read the blog. It actually says that on the pin itself. I don't always put CTAs like red on the pin graphic, but I do sometimes. Do you do that these days a lot? Do you do like the read the blog or like certain
Mhm.
CTAs? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. More often than not, or
Almost always.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so, when you create a pin, obviously you need like a pin title, a pin description, keyword optimized, the graphic. And so sometimes people wonder if you're creating 3 pins, can you be using like the same, title, the same description? And I know, Heather, do you have a video about that we can link actually about reusing descriptions? Oh, are you?
Reusing them, not really. It's kind of just sprinkled
Okay.
throughout all of the topics that I've talked about writing
Yeah.
descriptions. I can go get the how to write a good pin description
Oh, yeah, that's probably a good
video
idea.
and blog post though, for
Okay.
my website
Okay.
and put it in the chat.
Yeah, you're freezing up a little bit, just so you know. I don't know why, but that'll be a good screenshot with us both making those faces. Yeah, because I'm just thinking like as I'm going through this, I know there's going to be other questions and it'd be great to have a place to send people to because they're probably wondering those things, right? So, but we have more to cover, so I'm not gonna stop and go through all those details, but we'll link at least one video in Heather's on Heather's channel that'll help you with writing pin descriptions and titles and things like that. Okay, so that was 3. So we're up to 5, 2 emails, three Pinterest pins. And then the next thing I did is I used the blog post to generate about 12. I think in this case I did 12. My goal is usually like 10 or more, but this one there was just like a lot in it. So I ended up with 12 posts for threads because I'm pretty active on threads these days. So by copying and pasting several small gems in the email, I'm thinking about emails because I'm scheduling emails this week. In the blog post, I was able to come up with 12, different little pieces of micro content that I wanted to put on threads. And there was a variety of them. Some of them were just like 1 or 2 sentences, just like, catchy little standalone phrases. There was a couple of them were kind of like thread style where there were like 4 or 5 paragraphs that I wanted to share all together as a gem, and I threaded them in threads. So it's like you do the one post and then you add in the comments, you add the extra piece, all the additional paragraphs. So yeah, so I was able to do a lot of those. And I experimented at that time, at your suggestion, Heather, with using Buffer to schedule out all those posts. So I published this in June originally, and I was taking time off in July. So that was really helpful. I went into Buffer, and I just used the free plan, I think, because I was only scheduling I was like only scheduling 12, and I think you can do, no, I think you can do 10 with the free plan. So maybe I like published one right away, published another one, and then scheduled 10 more. But those were all, the most of those went out via Buffer, and that was really helpful as well. So now we're up to, that actually brings us all the way up to 17. That was a big jump because threads are so are so like easy to be prolific with and create lots and lots of pieces of micro content in threads, right? Have you been using where do you get your stuff for threads? Heather, have you been repurposing or is it mostly
From
more
blogs, and I also go to Pinterest's help docs and just take the content from there.
like just like get questions and things, or are you like copying and pasting stuff?
Yeah. No, like
Okay, because you just made it sound like
so
you were
I'll
just like
go
copying it and pasting it. Okay.
no.
Okay.
No, I'll go and I'll read a help doc and I'll be
Yeah.
like, okay, someone definitely is going to have a question about this. And then I'll rewrite it in my Heather way
Yeah.
and I'll post it.
That's so good. Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
so smart. That's really
They
smart.
already
Like,
have all of it over there. Might as well.
yeah, that's so smart. I know we're off on a
Plus,
little
they're
tangent,
linking
but
to
that's
my
so
stuff
good.
now.
Yeah.
Like they're promoting my stuff and they want to promote my stuff. So it's like they know I'm following best practices and they want to
Mhm.
help me out in all the ways. And yeah,
Yeah.
might as
So
well.
it would make sense. Like, well, the thing that's so smart about that, and I know we're off on a little tangent, but I just want to point it out so our listeners can appreciate just how smart you are, but also just like see what you're doing here is that Like Pinterest has already done the work to know what questions people ask,
Yeah.
right? So you can answer those questions with your Heather spin. And we all know that, you know, your Heather spin is very like not only educated because you've been doing this for 8 years, but also you can sometimes go deeper than they can, and you can give more like commentary than would be appropriate for Pinterest to give in like a help document, for example.
Yeah, because they have to be very diplomatic.
Right.
And
And you don't. No,
no,
no, you do to some degree, obviously, for various
I
reasons,
do,
but
yeah.
you can provide more of more guidance and more like tips and tricks. So that's
Yeah.
really good. So smart. Okay, so those were the threads. And then the next thing I did is I turned pieces of that blog post into some Instagram posts. So I still am pretty active on Instagram. Basically, once a month or so, I go in and I create like 3 or 4 posts and I schedule them out. That's kind of like what I've been doing. I'm not going like crazy on there because I just don't think engagement's very high, but I like being on there. I feel like I have grown an audience there that I want to show up for, so I'm continuing to do that. So I created an Instagram carousel post that touched on each of the blog's 3 main points. So there's lots of ways to generate an Instagram carousel post from a piece of like a blog like this that's separated into like 3 main sections. Because remember, it's like I'm sharing 3 strategies, basically 3 ways to avoid the expert brain trap that keeps us. I didn't really talk about what it's about, but like it keeps us, sometimes when we know a lot about our field, we end up getting like using language that's like lingo and jargon. It doesn't really connect with the people who we want to connect with our content. And so that's kind of what this blog post is about. It's about 3 ways to avoid that. So with this carousel post, I used each of those 3 ways. I boiled them down to like 2 sentences, and put them in the carousel post that way. And then the call to action was to read the full blog post. But there's lots of ways you can do this. I could also create a carousel for each one of those 3 or any one of those 3. And even within some of those 3, there were like sort of subsections that I could have used for like a full carousel post as well. There's so many ways to take apart a well-structured blog. When you have a good structure, it makes it easier to like deconstruct it into micro content like a carousel post, if that makes sense. So I did that. And then I also repeated the same concept as an Instagram reel in this case. So the reel that I created, I'm going to open it up to remind anybody or to let people know if they didn't see it. Most people probably didn't see it, but I know some folks listening might have. It's just a picture. It's like a picture of me making a face, basically, which is kind of like my style of reels. And it just says expert brain equals the curse of knowing so much that you forget how to communicate in a way that truly resonates with those seeking your help. Main symptom, your content gets ignored and doesn't get you clients. And then it says, read the caption for 3 ways to avoid this. And then the caption, I think I actually used either the same caption as I did for the Instagram carousel, or, oh, no, I know, you know what I did is I actually used the same copy that was on the Instagram carousel as the caption for the reel that I did. And I think I scheduled those out. I did those like 10 days apart. So first the carousel came out, and then 10 days later I had the reel scheduled to come out.
I really
And
like that.
thanks. And I would ask people, I would almost be, did I mess up and lose my notes? No. I would almost want to like ask people who follow me closely in both places, did you notice? And I guarantee you they probably didn't.
No,
You
no.
know? Like, but if they did, they don't think to themselves, oh, she just posted about that. They think, oh, okay, she's consistent. She has this opinion and it didn't change over the last, 2 weeks. She's reliable.
Hmm.
Sometimes people read things and it hits differently because of the format. Some people don't read carousels, but they love reels. Some people it's the opposite, right? So
Yep.
yeah, so that's how I did that. And again, it's like I could have made, if you gave me like a full day, I could probably make 10 reels from this one piece of content from this blog post. But I didn't tell myself like, oh, if I don't sit down to make 10 reels from this and squeeze every last drop of juice I can out of this one blog post to get as many reels as possible, if I can't do that, then it's not worth doing. I didn't think that to myself. I just thought, you know what? I'm going to make one reel, and then I can always circle back, again, just like I'll circle back to Paris and, see more museums the next time I'm there. I can always circle back and, pull more gems for more reels and more micro content in the future.
Yep.
I lost count. Was that 19? I think that was
I
19,
think
right?
you're up to 19. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It was those threads. I know some people are probably being like, well, the threads, Jana. You know, you could do like 39 if you do all the threads. But yeah, that's the basics. That's generally about the amount of content that I repurpose from each blog the first time around, I would say.
Incredible.
The
Incredible.
crowd goes wild.
The crowd goes wild. No, I think that's great. And it just shows like truly how easy this process is to do once you have a system in place.
Yep.
You truly do need that system in place. And that's part of what, when we talked about this last week, what I felt like I was missing. So, like, Jana has made it so easy for you guys to think through, like, okay, I'm going to make a carousel. I'm going to recapture the carousel copy to make a use for a caption elsewhere. I'm going to take the blog. I'm going to write 2 emails, and then I'm going to make 27 threads. Like, if you're having trouble ideating around what all those threads should be, have ChatGPT help you.
Yep. Yep. You can definitely, I have a prompt that I use sometimes if I need to get some basic ideas. I've honestly found that a lot of times if I just go through and copy and paste them myself into a doc, just pieces right
Yeah.
out of the blog because it's written content, that I end up liking the output better. But sometimes ChatGPT can help me be more creative and come up with reimagined ways to say those things as well. So that's a really good point that you make. That's a good way to help do that. And also, like, it doesn't have to be 12 threads. It could be 5 threads, and maybe you have a couple of quote graphics. And remember, quote graphics, when it comes to me, the way I teach quote graphics is you're not quoting other people. Nobody cares about your Brene Brown quotes. If they want to see Brene Brown quotes, they'll follow Brene Brown. You're quoting yourself. You're taking little gems and creating a quote graphic. Or maybe you decide to do 3 carousels, you know, instead of a carousel post type of thing on threads with the multiple, you know, thread things. Or maybe you do both. You can absolutely do both. You can use the same
Yeah.
copy for a carousel as you use for a thread, a multi-thread thread on threads. So there's so many
Exactly.
ways to do it. And the key to it is not to get overwhelmed, just to do something, because you're never going to be able to do everything because there's always unlimited number of things you can do. When you have a blog post or a piece of long form content that is rich to begin with and detailed and has a lot of gems to pull out of it. And I thought that's what you were going to say when you said it just goes to show how easy it is when you have you said a system, which is absolutely true, but I thought you were going to say when you have a piece of detailed content that you took the time to, you know, to actually work on, that you can always go back to over and over and mine, you know, for months and years for all of your micro content. It makes it
Well,
so much
and
easier.
something that I would say to that effect is, and this is where I get in my own expert brain and I get hung up and I'm like, well, I've already explained this here, so why would someone else want to hear it again? Is okay, so the way that I get out of my expert brain is I look at that piece of content. So in relation to what I said earlier, going to Pinterest help docs and looking at something over there and then bringing it over and making a thread out of it. What questions is someone going to have about this thing? So it might be included in my blog post, but related to that one little tidbit. So maybe it's you know, one of my things in my YouTube video yesterday, it's Tuesday, right? Was how to make your website Pinterest friendly. And I said to add the save button from Pinterest to your website.
Yep.
A lot of people don't actually have embedded save buttons or like sharing buttons like what I have.
Right.
So
So
even
their
just
question
adding
is like, how?
save button, yeah.
Yeah.
How? Why? Where? Does this work on multiple different websites? I can
Which
take
one
a
should
few
I
minutes to
use? Right. There's
figure
so
all
many
of that out.
questions.
Yeah, should you use Pinterest save button with their JavaScript, or should you just go and get sharing buttons? Like that one little tidbit could then spin into 12 more pieces of content if I took 15 minutes to do that.
100%. And the workflow that I just went through is really focused more on just copying and pasting and tweaking from your long form content. But what
Mhm.
you're describing is so good. It's basically, I like to think of that as content expansion.
Yeah.
There's so many ways we can take that content and we can expand it into new ideas that will work on different platforms. And one thing that's so neat about you, Heather, as a marketer, is you are so prolific. You're on so many platforms and you do them so well. And you know, you're like a, you're like a, you're like a unicorn. You're the program runner. that runs a successful program, but you're also a content creator. Like you are an influencer. You have this huge YouTube channel, you have brand deals, like you got all these
Oh,
pieces of your business. You're like feeling overwhelmed. You're like, yeah, I do. Oh my God. But anyway, I would never recommend to most of my clients that they try to do all the things you do. But the fact that you do them all, one of the reasons you do that is because you've trained your brain to be able to not only repurpose content, but expand content. You say to
yeah,
yourself, okay, I have this piece of content. What questions are people going to ask about it? And you're actually expanding it into all of this fresh content for other places as well. And
yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing as well. Um, so yeah, that's like almost a different, like we should do like a whole
It's,
YouTube video or live about how we think about like prompts for content expansion would be really cool.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think that could definitely be interesting is, how to expand on your existing content. Um,
Yeah.
think about it differently because that's probably the number one way I make more content. I spent
Hmm.
2 hours yesterday going through my content library in ClickUp and just like making decisions on, are we going to keep this? Are we ditching it? Is it just going to live on the blog? We're never going to touch it again. Like basically going through all my content because my plan for next year is to go by themes, and within the theme of the month, we're going to have topics, and I'm going to be reshooting a lot of content. And I kind of need to know what I already have. That way I know
Yeah.
what starting point I have.
So you're taking inventory.
But like
Hmm.
that's the process is taking the old and making it new and reworking it from new angles with new ideas and with the updated material that has been provided by the platform that I work on, which is Pinterest. So yeah, probably the number one way I create content these days is by expanding
Hmm.
because no other Pinterest creator is creating content the way that I do on the
Mm-mm.
platform, the way that I do. They cover the very, very, very basics.
Hmm. Yep. Which is great. People need the basics, but
Sure.
they also want to know, first of all, there's a lot of people that need to go beyond the basics and get the answer to the how part. A lot of the how
Yep.
that you do is, I mean, and I know you do some of the how on your YouTube channel, but you also do a lot of the how in the membership as well.
Yep.
And then there are also people out there who are getting started who are smart enough to know that they want to learn from someone who isn't just covering the basics. There's also more when you're ready for that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that's important. And so there's a lot of creators, I guess, out there, some of them who truly teach Pinterest, and then others who just are using it as like a way to get views, basically, right? Like on
Mhm.
YouTube, for example, who just like kind of scratch the surface. And like that's fine if it works for them, but that's not you. You're someone who is a like full resource for people at all stages in their Pinterest marketing journey. So it's
Yeah,
you.
and it's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy going beyond. I
Yeah,
enjoy
it's just
wowing
like how you
people.
roll. Yeah.
It's just my personality,
Hmm.
really. So if I can do that easily, then and content expansion generally is the way that I do that easily, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I
And
love
people
that.
need to know more than just how to write pin descriptions. What are all of the things that you need to think like because there's so
Hmm.
many problems and because I have an audience that's so willing to tell me what they want and what their problems are, because that's the community I fostered.
Yeah,
It has
which
allowed
is
me
huge.
to do that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's so
all
good.
right, well, we're at the top of our 30 minutes that we have for today, but tomorrow or next week, we're doing 100 students enrolled. What does it take to make this many online course sales? This is another case
Yeah.
study kind of video we're doing for Jana because she's hit an amazing milestone and actually gone well beyond it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I hit it, it was again, it was the summertime when we were kind of content planning again, if I recall.
Yeah, it
And
was
yeah,
back
I
in
hit
August.
100 students at that point because my program has only been around for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah, now we're close to like 140. But we're gonna
Woo.
talk about the reflections about how to get to 100 students, like what I really needed to do, what you truly need to do to, get to the point where your
Yeah.
program is serving that many people.
We're so excited to do that. So same place, same time here next week. And for now, we're off to go do something super special that you guys might get to listen to later.
Yep, we got some more content to record.
All right, chat
Secret.
soon. And we're out. Okay,